Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. It's Charlene Lee, and I am here today to talk about how to get better results from generative AI, and in particular, how to use custom GPTs. So I know some of you have experimented with these things. I'm very excited to show you some of the ways I'm doing them. So if you're joining us today and you have used and created custom GPTs, I would love to hear what you're doing with them, how you got into it, and how you're getting value from it. Because I'll just give you a little bit of example. I will talk today about what a difference it makes when you can do not just really good prompting, but can create a custom GPT that will give you really good results customized to you and your organization. So I want to go into that in great detail today. So again, please share if you're coming in and have used these things. I know some of you have talked to me beforehand and said, I love these things. So please share. I will show you some of mine. And let me get into it. So I have a presentation today, and you can get it with the QR code that's up there. You can also, I'm going to put it here. I'm going to try to copy it. I'm trying to think where it is. Here we go, and I will put it into I do not have it in here right now. I'll put it into the chat, and I think some friends, Jay, hopefully will put it into here's Jay, who'll put it into LinkedIn for me too as well, because I still can't comment onto LinkedIn with my platform. All right, so let's get into this. So a couple things that I want to show today is just to talk about what are custom GPTs. So first of all, the reason to have them is whenever you do a really good prompt, you will always get better results. And so I love using this slide because it lays out how to do what people call prompt engineering. And in this case, it's basically giving the GPT, in this case, Chat GPT is the example I'm using. It gives up more detailed instructions. I could just say, hey, go write me a speech. I have to give one in front of the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce. But I'm narrowing it down to say, this is your very specific role. You're a copywriter, focus on business. These are your instructions. And these are the cuts of content. I'm trying to create context. The text didn't go through here, but this gives a little more background in terms of the audience, what they're expecting, some information I may have uploaded into it about the Chamber of Commerce in San Francisco, the tone, and then very clear what the output is. So that's one way to construct a prompt. Now, if you're doing this over and over again, and you're having to do the prompts, you start getting kind of tired of it because it feels like each time you're coming back to using ChatGPT, for example, you're having to tell it, okay, now you're not the general GPT, you're going to be this narrow version of it. So it gets really annoying to have to do this over and over and over again. So, one of the benefits of having a custom GPT is that you can get better results because you've told it these things and how you want it to do a certain job over and over and over again. So some of the benefits of a custom GPTs, first of all, is just a specialized version, a custom version of a generative AI model. And so I'm going to show you today how to do that within ChatGPT and also in Claude. There are some, and also show one other quick example, which is Dante-AI, something I've been using for quite a while to create my own private chatbots. And the reason why they're so powerful is that you're customizing them with instructions like those prompts that I gave you, and then also with the data that you uploaded, like permanent knowledge of a knowledge base, so to speak. So you can give it examples of your brand voice, so writing examples. You can give it your brand guidelines, for example. You can give lots of information about your company, even your customer profiles, and also policies and procedures. Again, this is all assuming that you have turned off model training and you have a model that you feel very comfortable and secure uploading some of that more private data and information. So, I think one of the things is that's so important is being able to know what you can do with these and to experiment with them. So I really wanted to take the time today and show you some of the things that you have. I have a comment here from Jay. So Jay says, we do several things with GPTs at Bill. We do social listening projects for clients and scrape for specific keywords and then put into a custom GPT with specific instructions to use natural language processing to do analysis. Jay, that's pretty high level here. So thank you so much for that example. And I love the fact that you're creating custom GPTs for each of your clients because they are going to want to use that content and information for generating the keywords in a very specific way that's unique to them. And that's how I heard about it, because I heard it from a couple of my friends who were working at agencies with clients, and they were creating these custom GPTs so that as they were doing analysis or research or even writing and creating content on behalf of their clients, it was really customized. The results were really customized to them. So I thought that was a great example. So I want to give you just a quick idea of how powerful this can be. So I have created, for example, in ChatGPT, an editor called a Bookwise editor. And it has a lot of my content and it's very customized to me, understands how I think about the world. So I just want to give you a quick example of what that looks like. I'm going to hide this banner here for a second so you can see more of it. And I'm going to expand this even further so you can see because the font is really small. So on the left-hand side is just using generic chat GPT. And it gives, pretty good. My question here was, how would you formulate a generative AI strategy? And it says, understand the landscape, define strategic objectives. It's pretty generic. And on the right-hand side is my Bookwise editor. And it has a lot of my content. It has things that are very specific to me. And it is very, very clearly my approach to creating a generative AI strategy. So start with organizational purpose and values, start small, build a foundation, align with your strategy. So it's not exactly the way I would write it, but it's pretty close. It emulates the way I'm thinking and it reflects the way that I see the world. So that gives me great confidence that that customized GPT understands me, understands how I write. Even the language of it sounds more like me because it's drawing from my words, from my content that I've given it inside the knowledge base. So these are all different ways to think about how you can start using ChatGPT and other tools like it. So I want to give you a little bit more information about how to actually do this. So the way that it does it is that you have, I'm gonna skip this slide. This is the wrong slide here. I'm gonna get rid of that. So let me show you, excuse me, some examples of how I created my Bookwise editor. So I use an editor because I'm constantly writing things and I have it set up in ChatGPT. I'll show you my version in Claude. And I'll explain in just a minute why I use two versions of them because they're two very different engines. And ChatGPT is, again, the first one that started with it. And I have uploaded all my content, my past articles, my live streams, my book, The Disruption Mindset, and I give it chapters that I've finished inside the book too. And so some of the things it has are the ability to create very detailed instructions. So this is just the first section of the instructions. And again, it will look very similar to those custom instructions that I showed at the very beginning here for the Chamber of Commerce. I give it a role. Your role is to serve as a book development editor and ghostwriter. Your job is to do this. Occasionally, you write as a ghostwriter to write or draft content of my book, and your expertise is this. Note the tone and the style. And if we're writing because it's a co-authorship with myself and Katja Welsh, use we instead of I to reflect that co-authorship. So these are very detailed instruction. It goes on and on and on. I even have something in there that please correct my grammatical errors because I was realizing it would write with my same grammatical errors and style. And I was just tired of correcting that over and over again. So I said, just do me a favor, don't do those grammatical errors. So the benefits of having this is that it has, again, instead of having to use that prompt over and over and over again each time I start a new a new session with ChatGPT, it now knows what its role is. It already has all that knowledge and instructions in there, so I don't have to prompt it over and over again. And so the other thing that's really helpful is that I can upload those files. And this is what that knowledge base looks like. And again, I have my fat outline, I have my live streams, I have so many different things in here. And one of the things I do is each week when I write my email newsletters or my disruption uh, newsletter for LinkedIn, I keep it in one giant Google Doc that my team and I work on it together. And so it's super easy for me about once a month or so. I download that file, remove the old one and update my database. So it's super easy to keep it updated instead of all these individual files. So management of your knowledge base becomes an art and a science too as well. Now, I let me just check here and see if we have any comments here. All right, so just a little bit more detail from Jay on how he does this. He's also scraped 5 years of mentions of adverse events and built a custom GPT to do quality assurance of the comments review for clients. Excuse me, and a current project is to take approved response guides into a custom GPT to post questions to get responses. I love this. We're asking ChatGPT to write the code to make it possible. So, Jay, I think this is a really good example of how you're really getting some really good use out of ChatGPT and especially these custom GPTs. Asking it to write code and responses back to questions is absolutely a fantastic way to do it. And again, if anyone else is using these things, again, encourage you to comment and add your experiences into here. So I'm going to give you a couple more just details on how this all works. Again, I showed you some of the examples here before. It's just so much better in terms of doing this. Now, Claude, I also love using. I love Claude because I think its tools, especially Sonnet, are just so good at writing. And so it just gives me a different perspective. And I have exactly the same content in here as I do in ChatGPT. So it's a little bit different in that, for example, in the upper right-hand corner, the instructions are in this tiny little space here. And you can see at the beginning of your world was to serve as a book development editor. It has all my files there. And again, the instructions are pretty detailed. So these are all ways that you can use it. And I'm going to give you just one more example. And this is from dante-ai.com. And what I really like about it is, again, it's completely private and custom to me. I have uploaded, I have done this with the other ones, but I find Dante really good at this for one very reason. I've uploaded all my book interviews into Dante. And the reason I put it in there, and I have it in the other ones, and it just doesn't work as well, is because I can choose the different engines that I want to use on the right-hand side very quickly and easily. So depending on the task that I want it to do, I can choose GPT-4, I can choose GPT-4 Mini or Turbo, have expand the context window, and I can also choose between all the different engines on Claude. So depending on the task, I can very quickly and easily switch whichever model I'm using and see which results I get better. So I don't have to change the models constantly changing. I can do it right here instead of switching back and forth between all these different places. So, and again, one of the nice things about this is that I can also build a chatbot on top of Dante AI. And it's much more difficult to do that within Claude and GPT. You can do it, but Dante AI is really well suited for being able to create a chatbot with very, very detailed instructions on how you want the chatbot to interact with whoever you want to give access to it. So I'm particularly very picky. I love my chatbot. It's still not ready for prime time because I just haven't put the effort into it. But next week, I'll be talking about my avatar, and I'm going to be training the avatar using the data, again, in my knowledge base to just give really good results, hopefully. Fingers crossed, and we'll be able to see that there. All right, let me see. Let me keep going a little bit because I want to spend a little bit of time just showing you how to get it set up. Again, I do want to just say that if you want to get the slides, you can go to charlinglee.com/use custom GPTs. And sorry, it's so long, but it's really long in there. But I also want to give you another resource here that hopefully is helpful too. I think this will show up. Yes, it will show up. All right. I also created some very detailed instructions on how to get to these slides. And I'm trying to see if I can find the URL, and I can't find it right now, but it is bit.ly/GPT-instructions. And one of the things that this does is I really gives you, let me make this a little bit smaller so you can see it better. There we go. Um, so one of the things that it does is, first of all, I talk about how to make sure your data is not being used to train the model. So lots of privacy controls. And then I'll go through and talk about how to actually set up your GPT. So gather all your documents, recommend putting them in a folder, and then set the GPT. And I'll show you just live, but this gives you all the instructions step by step of how to do that. So hopefully you'll be able to use that and just see all the different ways you can do this. Now, I do want to spend a little bit of time and show you how to actually set up the GPTs, both in ChatGPT and also in Claude. So this one, I'm going to make this much bigger so you can see it. I think that's as big as it's going to get. All right, so I'm going to, over here under Explore GPTs, you go click on that, go over to Create, and you'll see the blank slate here. And then you can name the GPT, whatever you want, describe it, put in lots of instructions, and then over here you can upload files. And one of the things I always check off is the ability to do web browsing because I wanted to be able to go out and pull things as I need it and want to. Inside of GPT, Chat GPT, that's not always enabled. So it's super easy. I can go and upload files wherever I want from whichever file I have. And it's really, again, fairly straightforward to do. And I'll just show you my Bookwise editor. Again, I can show you how it's all filled out. You can see it's coming up. Here we go. All the instructions here. I will expand it so you can see the full thing here. And then also down below, you can see all my files. And again, I have it just done. And you can also do these new actions. I don't do them. I think, Jay, you're probably using them because you can do all these things on the back end with instructions and APIs to be able to tap into outside files too as well. And I have these. I'm not going to show my editors, my interviews, because they're all confidential. But let me show you Claude and how I do that there. Now, Claude has something very similar. You can go over here, and in the left-hand column here, you'll see it says projects. So ChatGPT calls them my GPTs. Claude calls them projects. You can see here that I have a couple projects going. I was creating a course for LinkedIn with AI agents, so I was using that. Here's my Gen AI book, my Bookwise editor, similar to that. I've been doing some exercises with some CEOs and creating a personal AI for them. So I was working with that. But let me show you my Gen AI book. If I want to go and edit this, let me just show you how it works a little bit more. So I can go and edit this GPT and I can edit the details there. I can also go back in and add more content. Oh, how do I go back and do this? I know I can get in here and not edit it, but I can't figure it out right now. This is one of those wonderful things where, how do I do this? I know I was able to edit this before and I was in it, and now I can't figure out how to show it. But anyways, you can edit all the details in here. Oh, I think it's in here. I think I'm not signed in. That's why. But again, one of the great things about this again is I can go back and forth and use these things. And then I'll just show you Dante AI very quickly. Let's see. I'm going to sort of from over here. Here we go. And I log in. It's not in there yet, right? And again, very similar. I showed you the screenshots before. I can choose whichever content I want to have. And I can go and show you, again, very similar in terms of instructions and just the content, again, that I uploaded. And what I really do love about this is that I can go and choose any of the models that I want to use depending on my task. And it's important because it's a pretty simple task. You can see how many credits it takes. So it's $4 a response. If you're using more tokens, and so example, if I'm using 4.0, but with 128K context window, it's going to cost me a lot more credits than would be if I'm using, for example, the mini. Same thing with Opus over here. It's very expensive. It gets super expensive if you're using the 200K context window. But again, Sonnet, which I really like a lot, is not that expensive. So compared to, for example, Opus. So I can choose whichever ones I use. And my little secret thing is when I run out of credits on ChatGPT or Claude, I kind of pop over to Dante and use it there. So those are some of the ways that I use custom GPTs. And again, I encourage you to try using these things because I think it's so helpful to be able to create these custom things. I'll give you another example. 2 weeks ago, I was working with a group of CEOs and I sat 12 of them down and I built custom GPTs for each of them, and we just had some limited content. We took and found publicly available information about the company. Sometimes it was earnings calls, sometimes it was an interview with the CEO. So we could take their content and provide information. It was basically 3 to 7 basic files that we uploaded for each of them, all publicly available information. And then we gave it to them and say, take a current task that you're doing and give it a try, see what happens. And they all had used it. Some of them were using it a lot more, and none of them had ever experienced a custom GPT, and they loved it. One CEO started saying, "Hey, I've got this presentation I have to do. Create a presentation for it." And he knew that his strategies and other documents were in the knowledge base, and it just created the 20-page presentation for him. And I asked him, "What do you think?" He goes, "It's pretty good. I'm pretty much done with the presentation, but this would have been that much better starting point. It would have saved me hours so that I could have that structure and then modify it." Some other people said it wrote like I asked them to write a blog post about the position on something, and we knew that this CEO in particular was trying to be more empathetic in the way they communicated. So we said, make this more empathetic, and it made their voice again in that original blog post, which sounded a lot like them. They said, but they made it more empathetic, and they said, "This no longer sounds like me, but it's the way I want to sound." So, again, some very helpful tools depending on how you're using it. And again, it really depends on how you give the instructions and also how the types of files that you're going to upload into them too as well. So a couple of things that I do want to talk about. Oh, here we go. Jay has one more tip. My tip is to make sure you put into the documents clear headings of what the data is in the document. I so agreed with you, Jay. One of the things that I do with my book interviews is I have very clear headers and metadata at the top that says who the interview is with, the date, the company, and things like that. And then the way I use my book interview database is thousands of pages of transcripts. So I'll give the engine, the model, a snippet for a section and say, I'm looking for a snippet of quotes or examples from the book interviews that match this or express this. Give me a couple options. Tell me which file it is and give me the timestamp of where this is located, and it'll go and find me and provide a couple options and explain why the engine thinks that it's a good selection to be used in that particular paragraph or a section of the book of that chapter. So again, it is a huge time saver for me. It knows more about my transcripts. It is not perfect, but it gives me an opportunity to tap into this knowledge base in a way that I could never before. All right, so that's what I have for today. I want to encourage you, strongly encourage you to give these things a try. Again, I sped through it so quickly, which is why I really encourage you to go and look at some of those instructions that I have. Again, thank you, Jay, for posting up the instructions for it. Is bit.ly/GPT dash instructions. And the benefit of these things is that you will get much better results. And especially if you are doing things over and over again, whatever that task is. Think about using and creating a custom GPT to help you do that task. Now, I flip in and out of these things all the time. I don't use my book editor, my book interviews all the time, depending on my task. But it's one of those things where I think it's super helpful to be able to create something if it already knows to create something to do something you do all the time. So some of the things on my list is a travel bot that understands how I like to travel. So when it's putting together guides, it already knows these are my travel preferences. I like to go for adventures. I don't necessarily want to stay at the best hotels. I'm interested in saying and trying new adventures. I'm really into food tours in particular. So when it's doing some travel planning for me for a new destination, it already knows what my preferences are. And so you can see how it's beginning to, again, just take into account the way you see the world and the ways that you want to interact with the engines. So that's what I have for today. Next week, we're gonna have a lot of fun. I built I got built for myself a digital avatar, a digital twin, and it can speak on my behalf. It sounds like it moves like me. It's not quite as expressive as I am at this point, but it's just going to be better. So I'll talk about avatars, what they can do, and fingers crossed, I'll even have it do real-time Q&A. Don't know if it always works, but it's pretty darn cool. And we'll talk about what it means for the future. And also, I've been showing it to various audiences over the past week, and I'll share with you what the reactions have been to as well. Always not always positive, I have to say. All right, so let's see. Any other comments here? Uh, Jay asked me, "So you'd be putting together planning for Burning Man?" That's not a bad idea, Jay. I do like to go to Burning Man. I'm planning on going next year, fingers crossed. But I would love, again, for there is actually a really interesting database that you're giving me ideas for about all the food and activities at Burning Man. So I would love for it to create a custom um, guided food tour just for me and my preferences and do a plan for it each day that I'm out there. So that would be a great use for it to do that. And then we also have Leonardo. This is a great skin in the game exercise. Thank you. Yes, it is a great way to, again, I can't emphasize how much of a difference those CEOs had in terms of before and after. I was looking around the table and the looks on their faces like, oh, now I get it. Now I get it. So, if you have some issues getting your leadership on board, I recommend building a custom GPT for them. It took me the hardest part was finding all the content. But even if you have common content that is skinned to your company and you give that to your executives, it will be a much better experience for them that they will see their content, the way they think, reflected in the results that they get. So again, as Leonardo said, great way to get skin in the game from your executives to get them to see like, oh, this is mine. It's personal. It's relevant to me and to my organization. All right. Thank you so much for your participation today. It's always so much fun to engage with you all. It's why I do this work. And please send me questions and let me know what's working for you, what's not. And I will see you next week to talk about digital avatars. Thanks. Bye.